Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Collin Manley. We got a lot of baseball that we got to talk about today. There's so much that is kind of on my mind to the point where I'm going to be skipping ahead once again over news and noise. I know it doesn't feel right. That's my thing. I usually do that, cover some injury news, cover a lot of things going on around the league. But I have so much that is just really on my mind and it needs to be discussed leading into the playoffs. I really want to reflect upon it because there's a lot of expectations, I shouldn't say expectations, but maybe even predictions or things that we thought we were going to see. So it really made me want to reflect upon everything we've seen so far, along with some things that maybe we should be a little thankful for. I want to take the opportunity to talk about what we've gained from this crazy postseason. I really do want to talk about the things that happened because we would really be missing out if this was considered a normal season or if we followed normal guidelines. So I do want to talk about that. I want to talk about the Braves and Astros a little bit. I think they may go into these championship series a little underappreciated. I'll get into that shortly. And then I also want to take a look at a rankings that just came out recently, the top 20 starting pitcher rankings for the 2021 season. And I know, hey, we still got the 2020 season to wrap up, but I came across the article and I found it really interesting and I have some thoughts that go along with it. But there is something that I have to get off my chest and I want to talk about right away because I find it very important. It's a discussion that's being had every single season. And it's not going to go away. It really isn't going to go away, and it never will, unless if a change happens, and we absolutely love the change. But what I really want to talk about is, let's talk umpires. Now, I get to release my podcast on Sunday and Wednesday, so I had to wait a little bit on this one, because I mainly want to talk about Game 3 between the Rays and the Yankees, and some work at home plate. Now, as a fan, I've watched so many games with my fan goggles on. So I can't sit here and pretend like I don't understand some of the frustration when you feel like a strike call didn't go your way. Whether you are on the mound, whether your team is up to bat, I get it. Okay? I have been in those shoes. I have felt that. It happens all the time. Okay? But we need to face a little bit of a reality when it comes to umpires and what they are. There is still going to be some human error. And people say, well, then let's get the human error out of the game. Well, you don't understand that if we bring in these robot umps, they are going to be very fine-tuned to an extent that they may not be perfect when it comes to calling balls and strikes on where something crosses the plate. That is what they are set up to do. Where they cross the plate is where the ball or strike. It does not necessarily always matter where it finishes up. It could bounce off the plate. It could bite like that, and it could still end up being a strike just because it crossed if we're using the robot, using technology for all this. There is still a perspective when it comes to a human umpire that we need to have in the game, that we need to help us out. And there's frustrations with Mark Carlson, who was behind the plate in that Game 3 for the Rays and Yankees because there was a strike call that would have potentially ended an inning and ended up leading to a home run. But I think we need to take the time to actually look at his numbers from that game. Okay? This was compliments of at ump scorecards where they kind of keep track. New York Yankees lost this game to the Rays 8-4. Okay? Game 3, Tampa Bay takes the lead 2-1 because of it. Overall accuracy behind the plate, 94%. The league average is 91%. So he is calling a very high accurate amount of strikes based off what we are seeing in the game. Called 149 of 159 taken pitches correctly. That's pretty dang good, okay? There's going to be a little bit of leeway when it comes to a K zone, a strike zone. 94% is awesome. Outside zone accuracy, he called 104 out of 111 true balls correctly. Inside zone accuracy, called 45 of 48 true strikes correctly. Okay? We have to face a reality. We have to face it that a lot of these umpires are actually really good at what they do. And if we really want to go to any type of robot ump or anything that's technology, we're just opening the door for things to get slower. And we're going to slow the game down even more when these guys are pretty darn efficient already. Okay? It's a big part of the game. If we dig even further into his stats, his worst missed calls, we'll put that in quotes. Top of the 4th inning, there were 0 outs, runner on first, 2-1 count. A ball was called a strike. And it was low, considerably low. But at that time, runner on first, 0 outs, it really didn't affect anything. Top of the 5th, 0 outs, runner on first, 0-2 count, a ball that is called a strike. This one, stretching on a corner. But we see this all the time. Corners can be stretched out a little bit. This one isn't crazy. And then the bottom of the 8th, 1 out, bases empty, 1-2 count, strike is called a ball. And that was the one that was really controversial. But impact of missed calls. Overall, when they break this down, they said they decreased the Yankees' run expectancy by 0 runs. So they did not change what the Yankees would have scored. Decreased Tampa Bay's run expectancy by 0.71. So overall in the game, they believe that they actually took a run away from the Tampa Bay Rays. And they figured with his umpiring performance, it actually was more in favor of the Yankees. But yet they are the ones that lose this game and come out in the bottom of the outcome. I stand by it. These guys are usually pretty good. And here's the reality. Most of these guys are awesome, amazing at what they do. The problem is we have a few that are not that way. We have a true few umpires that are genuinely not in that. The ones you know, the names you know, have issues. Okay? We know about Angel Hernandez. Okay? There is a whole issue going on there in the sense of he is suing the MLB. He thinks he's being discriminated against. But a lot of players have a lot of beefs with him. A lot of managers. A lot of fans. They think he's awful, mainly behind the plate. Does he have his problems? All of them do out in the field. But behind the plate, people have their issues with him. But also because he has a problem, he's very quick to toss somebody. He doesn't take any crap from anybody. Probably because he's been around the league long enough. He knows what he's going to see. He knows what he's been dealing with. He's just not going to take it. Okay? He is probably our biggest known offender of having issues. Joe West might be another one. He's a guy that he'll show up. He'll make the moment about him. It happens. Okay? But outside of those two, of Hernandez and West, how many of these umpires do you even know by name? How many do you truly know who they are, could spot them, and you know who these umps are? They do a good job, and it's a rule. As someone who's coached for a long time, one of the things that I've always believed and said is, you know when you have good umps, good refs, is when they showed up and you almost forget they were even there. And a lot of these umpires, that truly is the case. You don't even realize they're there because they're just making the right calls over and over. And we have some challenges. We have some reversals on the close plays. But the thing is, you fans at home sometimes have to realize we have a luxury in the sense that we are seeing replays from 7 different directions. And you could go ahead and you could tell me, hey, well, we have those same technology that could give that Do you really want to be looking at every single close call? Answer that question honestly. Now, if you are someone that you truly thinks we want to look at everything, okay, get ready for 5-6 hour baseball games. And your fans, they're going to drop off the map. Okay, that's a small percentage that would truly want to review everything just for the sake of getting it right. Okay, we have a distinct advantage watching it on TV at home. We have to be fair to some of these umpires, and that's why they gave these managers the ability to challenge. Okay, it's there because the MLB, they're smart. They know, okay, we got to be able to fix some of these things because mistakes are going to happen because, again, human error. Human error. And the biggest scrutiny is going to continue to always be the guys behind home plate because they're involved in every single play. They really are. They alter so much. But when the league average is calling 91% correct, and we're getting playoff umps that are 94, 95% accurate behind the plate, it's hard for me to complain. And the other reality of the whole situation is when I look at this, these guys are the best umps in baseball in the world. They really are. These calls are usually going both ways. There's usually a way that this all balances out. It happens in all sports. Most of the time, it happens in all sports. There's a balancing act. The law of averages, it always comes back around. Both teams are given as many breaks as things are taken away. It tends to go that way. So I can't sit here and just overly complain and say that a team lost the game, they lost an opportunity just because of this. And one of the biggest things that I hate that the MLB did, or at least allowed this to happen from TV markets, and it's never going to change, it's never going to go away, is I don't know why we allowed a K-zone on the TV screen. Because you just opened up the possibility to bring more criticism to your employees and umpires. I really don't know the full story behind it. It'd be something to fully look up if umpires fought this. I really hope they did. Because it's just every, ho-hum person at home with a bag of chips watching the game is a stellar umpire now just because they have the K-zone there. Newsflash for the people at the games, they don't have them. That's not there. People at home, again, it's a luxury. And then we also have the technology of where it might scrape the strike zone instead of fully hit. It's just creating more tension, a lot more issues for calling a game for an umpire. It's not an easy gig. If you want to be an umpire in the MLB, you can go ahead and try, but it's not easy. You don't just get in there because you can. These are some of the best, and it's going to stay this way. I don't see major changes coming to umpires. I really don't. We'll continue to talk about the robot strike zone, but I don't know if we'll see it happen. It's been experimented with in some leagues. I know minors have touched with it a little bit, but overall, baseball's been very progressive this season. I mean, they tried the extra inning rule with runners on second. They tried to change things up with relief pitchers. They changed their playoff format. They've been willing to try new things. The DH is now in the National League, okay? They are willing to take risks and try things if they think it's going to better their game and help them. This has been a conversation going on for a long, long time, and it doesn't really feel like it's picking up steam, and I don't know if it ever will. So if you're the person that really thinks, hey, robot umps are the fix, I'm sorry. I just don't think it's coming. And I don't want to bash this person either because I get it. I've been there, and I've been the person sitting at their home watching the game and going, well, that was a strike. That was a ball. I understand. But sometimes we have to sit back. We have to put ourselves in perspective, and we really have to realize these guys are doing a pretty thankless job, and overall, they're pretty good at it. And we just have to accept some outcomes sometimes. It's something that we have to do. I know, not a fun conversation to start off a podcast. I get it, but it's been something that's on my mind since that game happened, and I really just wanted to get it out there. Speak it into existence because when it's just thoughts running around in your head for so long, it really sits there, really settles in. So I'm glad that I can actually say it out loud for once. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about what we've seen from this crazy postseason so far because I actually am happy with it. I sit here a little bit at peace with the postseason we've created, and I have my reasons why coming up here after a quick break on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
I really can't believe it. I'm still kind of sitting here in shock as the segment is over that I started things off with an umpire rant, especially defending the umpires. I guess I didn't ever really see that coming from me. But hey, what's done is done. I've put it out there. I've recorded it. I'm going to release it. I'm going to stand by it. I think I believe in the points that I was just talking about. But next on, I want to get back into our postseason because this really is an ultimate experiment to see if we truly enjoy this, if it truly worked well. There's got to be some changes next year because I stand by it. Baseball's been more progressive recently than it has been in the past. We're probably going to alter things. It's not going to be 16 teams, but something similar. And I really am sitting here today going, I'm a little thankful for this postseason and the way it was set up. The 8-8, the 16 teams, first and second places and the 2 wild cards in every division. Because I think now, looking back, and obviously hindsight helps, but still looking back, there's so much that we wouldn't have if we didn't change this format. Now, being realistic, 60-game season obviously changes things. With the injuries we saw in the regular season, some teams getting hot, maybe some surprise teams, those could fizzle out over 162 games. A team that's hurting could get healthy and get hot over 162 games. Teams that won the division after 60 could be out of the playoff picture, and reverse, teams that were out of the playoff picture could be back in it in 162 games. Let's start off with the truth there. That needs to be said. But dive into what we have, what we know. The first thing that I'm really thankful for in the fact that we changed this format to 16 teams, the Yankees and Astros would not have been in the playoffs in a normal year format. Okay? And that's just normal playoff format. If it's 162, who knows what happens, but after 60 games, they would not have made the postseason. They have been 2 of the most fun teams to watch in the postseason. And the Astros, going on to an American League Championship Series, like, who saw that one coming as the season went on? They would not have made it. Pushing on forward with that, the White Sox and the Indians would have been your 2 wildcard teams. They would have been your play-in game. With that said, they both got booted in the first round of our new format. They didn't make it outside 3 games. Like I stress the importance because these teams would have been locks, would have been into longer series, but in reality, when we shortened up the series and we gave more teams opportunities, the cream kind of rose to the top, is what I would say. The teams that we believed were going to be good. We thought the Yankees and Astros were going to be solid. At the beginning of the season, looking at this, we thought they were the most talented probably teams in the American League, period. We knew the Rays were good. We knew we were going to probably have the Twins. Indians were going to be in the mix, but the A's were going to be in the mix. But these were the 2 teams that we thought were going to be really solid. And they were able to make the postseason just because of the expanded format, and they were able to win a round and move on. That's important. Instead of our 2 teams being in the wild card playoff that would have been guaranteed something, they lost in the first round. I I'm just thankful for that. That's just looking at the American League because that's something that's really nice to see. Let's go to the National League. The Marlins. Yeah, they lost in the division series. I get that. But they would have been booted from this playoff format as well. We wouldn't have had the ability to see them and their young pitchers take on a Cubs team that was a division winner, would have made it, and we wouldn't have seen that possible upset. Now, if that game goes to 5, maybe the Cubs come back, maybe, but you got to win 3 in a row. That's not easy to do, especially if you might see Alcantara or Sixto Sanchez again and they just shut you down. So I'm really thankful there. Something else that would have been interesting. The Padres would have been in the play-in game. They would have been in the wild card game against the Cardinals. Well, lucky enough, we were able to see the Padres and Cardinals play each other in that wild card round, best of 3. But St. Louis would have most likely moved on because they won game 1 in that series. The Padres don't have a chance to come back and take the next 2. We're seeing more teams get an opportunity, and I really hope the MLB is going to take this then and look at our wild card play-in games. One game's exciting. It's like you're throwing a game 7 out there. I understand. But if you maybe want the best competition, the best team moving forward, we should really consider that series being a best of 3 right away. We really should. And I don't know if I was ever really crazy about that idea before, but I am more on it today than I was in the past. And that matters. Another thing that we would be very much missing out on, and I was excited about this as the playoffs were coming. I was excited about this. The closer we got, looking at what all the matchups potentially could have been. And then the wild card round came. We didn't have any division series matchups. I was like, bummer. Guess we're not going to see this. But then the second round hits, and we have 4 of them. 4 of them. This tension, these rivalries, this drama, all of that being brought into the playoffs or the MLB is such a great thing. Especially, I mean, it helps that all these teams were really playing each other for most of your schedule. So that obviously helps because it feels so fresh with a lot of these matchups in such a shortened season. But regardless, we don't get to see that very often. Unless if 2 teams from the same division make a championship series. That happens some of the time. Unless if one of your wildcard teams gets to go on and play the 1 seed and the best seed in baseball was from that same division. Otherwise, we're not getting these in the postseason when the games matter the most. And it felt like something that it was a new energy that we just felt like we were missing. I mean, come on, that Dodgers-Padres series, these guys are screaming at each other. These series are getting intense, and they're going to get intense regardless because it's the postseason. But when we bring in the fact that these teams just don't flat out like each other to begin with coming in, yeah, we got something new here. We got something great. I'm all about this. And I wouldn't want to miss that. That's one thing I'm big and thankful for. We got to see these teams that just hate each other or play great series against each other match up. That just doesn't always happen. Drama created with these second round matchups. It's amazing. Not to mention, I also love the fact that, again, I don't think we should have 16 teams next year. I don't. I'm going on the record and saying that. But I think we should have more than the 5. I would bump it to 6 and then have a wild card round. Because upsets make this playoffs more fun. I know there's a lot of Cubs fans out there, but you know what? I enjoyed greatly this Marlins team knocking them off. I really did. Now, the Yankees over the Indians might not be a massive upset, but seeding-wise, that's how that broke down. We were very skeptical about this Astros team coming to the postseason, even though we believed about them in the regular, before this season started. Them taking care of the Twins was like, wow, okay, we did not see that coming. That was different. And then we have the Astros go right on top of that, take out the A's, and they're just showing that, hey, we got something to prove. And we're going to talk more about the Astros here shortly in the next segment. But that upset feeling of shock of, oh my gosh, we did not see this coming. Team playing with nothing to lose. That brings a lot of fun, a lot of energy to this. Great to see. I didn't expect this to work as well as it did. I didn't expect this. But we have to look at this postseason moving forward, our top dogs up in the MLB, and really think about if we can roll this something like this forward. I look at a lot of these teams' managers and GMs as well. When these winter meetings happen and they talk about a lot of stuff, I don't know where this is going to go, but if I was a GM or if I was a manager, I would be pushing for an expanded format to stay, especially if we add more games on top of it. Because doesn't it look a lot better on your resume if you're a GM, if you're a manager, if you can say, hey, we've made the last 4 postseasons, even if they're wild cards? Okay, if there's more wild cards added. Doesn't that look better for you? I mean, we're going to talk about Houston, the fact that how many consecutive championship series they've made. They don't care. They don't care that they were the 2 coming out of the AL West. Hey, we're still playing in a championship series. What does that matter to us? And GMs, when you would talk about roster construction, I've built a good enough roster to continue to make the postseason. Now, and then we'll get a little more job security for these guys. I'm sure they're going to love that. And if we see playoff failures, okay, then we can start talking about guys losing jobs. I mean, I feel like this is just a win-win around the league. And I think a lot of teams are going to stick around for some sort of expanded playoff. 6, 7, who knows? Who knows? 8 did feel a bit much, but I could totally change my tune on this if we get 100 plus games in and we, feel a little bit better about these teams. Then we don't have teams coming in with losing records. That's one thing. When over half the league is making the postseason, losing records feel like they're just gonna happen, but they don't need to, okay? If someone is not finishing above 500, I definitely have an issue with them being in the postseason. We're going to see something like this, it feels like, and I hope I'm wrong, but it feels like we're going to see something like this in the NFL with the NFC East the way it's going. I almost would rather hand off their playoff spot to somebody else with a winning record just because by default we're going to give one entry. I don't like it. It bothers me. And so that's one issue I really truly had. But outside of that, I get to really reflect and talk about how much I love this postseason. It feels like it's getting better and better for me each passing day. And we're back into the normalities of what we've been used to, 5-game series, 7-game series, World Series. But the more I look back on it, that wild card round, I was all for it. All for it. It created a better postseason, a more enjoyable experience. I got to see a lot more drama. I got to see better teams move on. I can't believe I'm going to leave here and go, you know what? I really don't like the 1-game wild card plan. I really don't like that. I loved it for years because those games were so intense and so much fun. But now I sit here at the point and go, man, I wish it was best of 3. I wish we actually gave the other team a fighting chance to come back the next day. It was an opinion that I stood by for a long time. It's changed. And, the best way to see some little changes like this is to actually, try it. And I'm glad we did. And so I sit here a happy man after this postseason. Well, not after. We still got a lot of postseason left. But after the beginning of this postseason, and I truly love what we've seen so far. So that's just something I really want to talk about. I really think we need to be thankful for what we got to experience with this postseason. Now, I know all the circumstances around it with COVID and everything shutting it down. That's still a sad, scary thing that we're dealing with. And I've got to say, I'm not thankful for that happening. But with the time crunch and with us having to be flexible and adapt, something good came out of it for MLB. Something good came out of it. And I hope they take advantage, take the next step forward, try to fine-tune this thing and make it the best it possibly can be so that their product, their postseason product, is enjoyable and the fans love what they see. So that's all I have to say on the wild card round. I don't know if I'm going to go back to it again. I really think I've done a lot of great reflecting on it so far, but I think it's time to move on and focus more on what's going on in the moment. I think that's what I really have to do. So we're going to take another quick break, and then I want to talk about the Braves and the Astros, because I don't know if we are yet still really feeling them as big a threats as we should. And I want to talk about why these two teams are actually a little bit scary in this postseason. Coming up on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Postseason chatter, just gonna continue. I can't get away from it. I don't know the last time I've been so hooked to the MLB. And obviously, I'm on here doing an MLB podcast. I follow it every single year. I like to stay up with it. And in a year that my team and the Red Sox are so abysmally bad, I find myself just glued to everything going on. And it's funny how it works out that way. It really is. Because I also sit here and I look at two of our teams that have moved on to the championship series, and I truly sit here and wonder, are we worrying about them as much or giving them as much credit as we possibly should? We know they may not be favorited. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. But the Astros and Braves, I think, are just better teams that we need to be considering. I recently did a playoff World Series matchups that I love to see, and I never thought about Braves Astros. I never had that one quite on there. But still, regardless, I want to talk about these teams and why they might potentially be a little bit scarier than what we're giving them credit for. Okay? And I want to start things off with the Astros. And some people might say that might be the easier one to discuss, but I got to bring something up that sometimes I feel like after a regular season where we think we've learned so much, we forget who's really there. We forget a team's past. We forget a resume on what a roster has. And what I mean by all that is the fact that the Astros have gone to the American League Championship Series for now 3 consecutive seasons. And I almost am kicking myself for not realizing that this team that has so much experience knows what it takes to win in October. Having a World Series title, a lot of these guys. I can't believe that I didn't feel better about them potentially making a run. Now, all regular season, we had our concerns with them. They had a lot of guys. Altuve took a big hit with all the mockery on how he was performing this season, along with other people on the team, but Altuve kind of was the biggest joke of them, people bashing on him. Then you go ahead and you lose pitching. Garrett Cole leaves. Verlander's gone for the year. You're rolling with just Greinke and a lot of younger guys, new guys, pitching. It felt like something like, oh man, this is going to be trouble. This is them finally getting their punishment because of all the things they've done. We know their issues with suspensions and, cheating and everything. But you forget just how good these guys have been. And I don't want to say that they are just awful baseball players just because they got caught cheating. Like we know that there's a lot to it. When it came to the postseason, these guys know what it takes to win. And it shows with their guys that have been there. Carlos Correa is batting .438 with 3 home runs and 7 RBIs in his to make the championship series. This is before, all going into the championship series. George Springer, .318, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. Michael Brantley, .286, 4 RBIs. Kyle Tucker, the young guy, this is the new guy for him, .350, 3 RBIs, and he was one of their solid performers all season, so it's almost like adding on. Altuve, .263, way better than what he's done all year, a home run, 4 RBIs. Alex Bregman, .278, home run, 2 RBIs. I mean, all these guys, their numbers are looking fine in the postseason. They're looking fine. And we should have expected this. This is a team that has so much experience. They know how to win. I remember watching those Astros and A's games, and they would take camera angles and just span across their dugouts. And you could see the focus in the Astros. You could see it, the motivation. And how many times did they go to the A's, and you could just see it in their faces like, oh no, this is happening. This is truly happening. They are coming for us. We're gonna blow this. Like it was so noticeable. And a fire in a team that's been there before, has that experience, it matters. Okay, you can look across all sports. When the game slows down, when each pitch gets to be more important, every at bat tenses up a little bit. The guys with experience, they're going to be ready. They're going to be ready. And, you got to give your hats off to the A's because they went and won the West. But a lot of them haven't been this far before. And they're learning how to keep getting over that hump and keep pushing forward and working towards a World Series. This team in Houston, they know what it takes. They know what they need to do. Preparation for each game. They were ready. They still have a guy in Zach Greinke who's going to do great things for him. That's a guy with a lot of innings under his belt. And so far, when it comes to pitching, things aren't going too bad for them. Ryan Presley, struggled a little bit when it came to the last game, trying to get things moving on to the championship series with the A's, but he had been good up to that. Blake Taylor, Christian Javier, who got some starts for him this season. A lot of these guys are going to come out of their bullpen and they're going to be okay. I worried so much about their starting pitching, and there's still some things to be worried about in their starting pitching. Don't get me wrong. There is still some concerns there. But their leashes are going to be short. If anything's going wrong, we're going to move on to the bullpen. And even though he doesn't have a championship record, Dusty Baker's been around the block. He's been around a lot of baseball teams. He knows the game. After firing your manager, getting Dusty Baker to come right in with a quality team was a great fit, was a great fix. You brought in a guy who knows the game very well, and he's going to help you progress on. And I also sit here and I go, man, I didn't talk about that enough. I don't think I gave that enough credit because it was a great move by the Astros to bring in a manager that's just experienced. That's just experienced. You know your players have experience. Bring in a manager that's experienced, and you just put it all together, and things are going to work out if they make the postseason. I really am kicking myself on this one. So I think this Astros team, with what they bring to the table, is just a lot scarier because of that. And it's just, I don't know if I would predict them to win out, to go to a World Series, to win a World Series. But I have to realistically say that they are much better, especially watching them in these postseason games, than based on their regular season Regular season's one story. It's a blank slate once you get to the postseason. You can control your destiny from there. All you got to do is get there. So that's something. But the other team that I want to talk about is that Atlanta Braves. These guys are division winners. Their offense is phenomenal. They've done a lot of great things. And in the first time for them going to the National League Championship Series in almost 20 years, you got to start thinking about them. This was one of the best offenses in baseball this season. Freddie Freeman will be very highly in the conversations for MVP. And the funny thing about it is, though, he was not good in the postseason so far. He is not the one that's clicking. But other guys are showing up and bringing the offense. Acuna, through 4 games, was batting .316, home run, 2 RBIs. He's still an electrifying leadoff hitter. .579 slugging, .929 OPS, and such a small sample. Okay, Azuña, an underrated signing. This one has panned out so much for this team to boost their offense. Just a great move. Nick Markakis coming back is going to help as well. Now, he came back late to the regular season because he had decided to opt out of first, comes back. Eventually, things started rolling a little bit better for him. He's going to be better for them to have in the postseason. Dansby Swanson was having one of his better seasons for the Braves. You look to hope that it continues in the postseason, hitting still a little bit up and down. And then Travis Darno, for catching, he's been an offensive juggernaut for them. 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, batting .400 in the postseason. Everything offensively we know is good, and they're getting it from all over the place. They are a solid team. So we need to be considering them on offense alone. But that's not the reason why I'm sitting here going, man, I should really reconsider them. It's because they are surprising me so much with their pitching. Their starting pitching took so many hits this year. But when we sit back and look at it now, they have 2 great starters. In Ian Anderson, the young guy, doing great. And Max Fried, who will be in the Cy Young conversation this year. 2 starters that are coming out being solid, and then they're getting some contributions out of their bullpen. Will Smith, he's been around on quite a few teams, doing great. Mark Melancon, solid for them out of the bullpen. They just have a ton of names. Darren O'Day, AJ Minter, Shane Green, a lot of guys who have just been solid for them. If their pitching continues to play well and their offense continues to be balanced, we need to be talking more about the Braves as a threat to go to the World Series. We have to be talking about this. And it's the other team where I'm just kicking myself and I go, they're a division winner. They're really good. But yeah, you got the Dodgers, you got the Padres. This Cubs team, I didn't give them enough credit because it felt like all season they were just fighting off in the NL East. They weren't just running away with it. We were talking about the Phillies. We were talking about the Marlins. The Mets had a chance for a long time. The Nationals being defeated. We talked about every team in that division. But we just didn't talk enough about, this offense is really good. They're going to be scarier in the postseason. They're going to be scary. You're not going to want to see these guys. When they go and they make quick work of the Reds and the Marlins, and I'll also be honest, it may not be the toughest schedule to get to the NLCS, but they were dominant. Okay, their pitching carried them through versus the Reds. They shut down the Reds. Offense was great against the Marlins. They have what it takes to move on and be a serious World Series contender. We got to give them their due. So it's just what we have to do. I have to look at this Astros and Braves team and go, all right, it's time to sit back and actually go, all right, These guys are for real, legit. We should consider them because of reason ABC. We have to consider all this. It's time to look at these teams and be like, yep, this is legit. This is real. So glad I was able to do that. Almost got to give an apology to them, but hey, we'll see what they can do moving forward. We'll see what happens in the championship series and go from there. So we got one more segment coming up here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast, and there was an article released on ESPN for insiders about the top 20 starting pitching rankings, and I loved reading through this, especially because it made me notice a few things, and I want to talk about that with you guys coming up here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
So I fall in the danger of just about every other sports fan in the world talking about how much if you put out there, hey, here's a rankings list of our top so and so. There's a good chance I'm clicking on it. I can't avoid those. I like to see someone else's opinion, maybe learn about something, because most of the time they throw in like a statistic for you or something, and you just learn a lot. And sometimes you just like to read those and be angry because maybe your team got a little snubbed. Maybe there's a lot going on there. But recently, ESPN, Eric Karabell, senior writer for ESPN, he released a list for the top 20 for fantasy baseball, but top 20 starting pitchers by tiers for the 2021 season. And I go, hi, that's a lot of fun. I'd like to talk about a lot of those. So I ended up trying to give it a read. So just kind of going through those rankings. Jacob deGrom, number 1. No surprise there. Garrett Cole, 2. Shane Bieber, 3. That's your top guys. Top 3 as of right now. Now, I know there's other guys in the MLB that had really great seasons this year, but he's just trying to project for next year what he thinks they're going to be. Tier 2, you're looking at Walker Buehler, Jack Flaherty, Yu Darvish, Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw, Mike Clevenger, and Lance Lynn. My favorite from the Texas Rangers, who needs to get away from Texas. That's a whole nother story. We'll leave that one where it is. Tier 3, Lucas Giolito, Trevor Bauer, wherever he ends up next year, Aaron Nola, Danielson Lamet. Tier 4, Blake Snell, Max Fried, Steven Strasburg, Zach Greinke, Luis Castillo, and 20 rounding it out, Corbin Burns. If he continues on the pace he was this season, he might be a little bit higher. And then some others that were considered. Sonny Gray was on there, Brandon Woodruff, Zach Gallen, Charlie Morton, Zach Wheeler, Framber Valdez, Tyler Glasnow, Chris Paddock, Sixto Sanchez, along with others, definitely in the consideration. Now, getting the opportunity to read this list, it had a lot of thoughts go through my head, and I was like, okay, I got to write these down. I got to talk about these because there's so much that came from this that I have to not only just discuss, but also look up a little bit. And I want to start off with this one. Looking at those names, and I get it, it's fantasy rankings, but still, looking at those names, 15 of those 20 pitchers in the top 20 made the playoffs in our 2020 format. And not all 15 played. I need to start with that. Not all 15 played. So injuries obviously played a part, but their team was able to move on, and more than likely they were a big part of why their team was there to begin with. It just continues to show me the value in having aces. And some of these teams having a couple top-notch guys. I mean, let's be real. Kershaw and Buehler being on the same team with the Dodgers, if we move one to the other team, good chance they're their best pitcher on that other team. So some of these teams are loaded with a couple of them. I find it interesting to see. Like that, there's the value. There is so much. Like top aces are important. Now, obviously, you want to have more depth. You don't want it to fall off after one, but it's just having that importance of that guy that you can put on the mound when you need to really go out there and get a win. Managers do this. They're smart with this. They'll bring these pitchers. They'll plan to have these pitchers in games that they matter. And in the postseason, like when you go out there for game one, with a lot of these guys making the postseason, it's important to have them out there for game one. So just putting that value of what an ace can do for a team, love to see that. Very much love to see that. And I thought that's important to point out right away. Second thing that I noticed is right away looking at Jacob deGrom. He's going to be in line for potentially his third National League Cy Young. I don't think he's going to get it this year. I think Bauer was a little bit better, but he'll be in the conversation. He will definitely be discussed. Can we get him in the postseason, please? And not even just can we get him in the postseason. Can we get him in the postseason consistently? I don't want to call for the Mets to trade him, get rid of him. I don't want to be that guy and be like, hey, move this guy as much as I am on the Lance Lynn train to get him moving, because the Rangers really have no direction. The Mets might have a little bit of something there. But a pitcher like that, who's been that dominant over consistent seasons, I want to see him at the highest stage. And we really need to get him here. And the big thing that I'm noticing is I'm wondering if we're almost getting to the point with deGrom where we're going to start talking about his career being wasted. We're kind of there with Mike Trout. The Angels made some moves within their front office. They're going to do some different things hopefully this year. We got to get these guys, generational top level talent in deGrom and Trout, into the postseason. We need to see these guys at the highest level. It's a real shame in their careers if we can't talk about World Series or postseason just because their teams flat out aren't making it there. And baseball's harder than, like, say, basketball when we bash these guys for not having championships. I mean, there's a lot more that's going into it. These pitchers only get to play one out of every 5 games usually. All right? There's a lot that goes on there. But I don't know if it's going to ever happen in the near future or not. The trade deadline happens where deGrom is started to talk about being on the move, but I just want to see him on a contender so badly. So badly. This guy has had such a great career. I want to see more of him in the postseason now that he's really at his top level, top-notch stuff. So I just don't want him to have a wasted career. I don't want to be able to say that when he's done. The third thing that I noticed as I read this is, man, I can't get away from those Nationals. They can rebound in a big way next year with some healthy pitching. Max Scherzer. Strikeouts remain huge for him. And if he returns next year for the Nationals, they're going to have some relevancy. And then if we bring back a healthy Steven Strasburg, that nerve issue that ended his season in 2020, I can't forget how good he was in 2019. I can't get over that. He looked like the number 1 overall pick. He was one of the first guys that I really remember all the buzz around him. Same with Bryce Harper for the Nationals. All the buzz of when he was going to get drafted number 1. And it just really shows that if this Nationals team can get it back together and these 2 pitchers are healthy, they're going to come back. They're going to come back so well next year because they have youth, talented youth coming up. Juan Soto is just going to be the best kept secret from this year just because the Nationals weren't very good. Trey Turner was hitting for a very high average. They got some players on that team. We need the pitching to come back and help them out. Patrick Corbin's still there. I mean, got to help them out. It's the fantasy thing has him further back here just too because he is getting older. He is 32, Strasburg. And he's coming back from surgery. And we'll see what happens with him. The comparison will be up there with like Chris Sale. Now, Chris Sale obviously coming off Tommy John, not on that list. There's concerns, but when healthy, Scherzer, Strasburg, and that Nationals team, we should be talking about them in that National League East. We probably wouldn't have the Marlins making the playoffs. Sorry, Marlins fans, if they're a healthy squad. Just kind of my thoughts on it, but that's the way it is. So that's kind of the third thing that really stuck out to me. The fourth thing is, man, we know it in the moment, but looking here, the Padres are really building something special. With all the trades they've made this offseason, and now they are sitting here with Clevenger and Lamet as two top end pitchers. Going forward, this Padres team is building something very special. It's so unlucky that they are going to be almost balanced out by a Dodgers team that's doing the same thing. They both have top pitchers. Padres, like we said, Clevenger, Lamet, Paddock is in there as a number 3. That's not a bad number 3 option. Dodgers, Kershaw, Buehler, Dustin May. I mean, the offensive talent, these two teams, it's going to be fun for a long time. And I had fun looking at this, and I just have to laugh. The Padres have had troubles getting to the postseason, getting things together. They're finally figuring it out. Sorry, the Dodgers are still going to remain dominant and be very good as well. It's going to be a battle for the next how many years? That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. A lot of fun to watch. That was the fourth thing that came to me after I was reading these rankings. But the very, very last thing that came to me as I was reading these rankings that I just put a smile on my face, knowing all of this, is that there is such promising young talent starters in the MLB like we've never seen. I can't remember the last time I looked across the spectrum of the majors and went, wow, we got a lot of guys 26 and younger that are really good. And I put that cutoff at 26. I could stretch it up to 27. Pitchers can last. They can be around for quite a while. They can disappear quickly with some arm issues too. I know that. But it's a position where they can linger. And just looking at 26 down and going through this list, going through some of the extras, but also just grabbing some other names that weren't on the list, I was, wow. I mean, Walker Buehler for the Dodgers, 26. Flaherty for the Cardinals, 24. Giolito, 26 for the White Sox. Fried, 26 for the Braves. Burns, 25 for the Brewers. Zach Gallen, 25 for the Diamondbacks. Paddock, 24 for the Padres. Sixto Sanchez, 22 for the Marlins. Dustin May, 23 for the Dodgers. And then there's names that got left off in there. There's names that got left off. I'm just writing down some of them that were coming to my head that were on the list and just others. I mean, such promising young starters. Pitching it just feels like we're almost making a little shift to where a lot of our big names are starting to become some really great pitchers. And that can change, obviously, as the season progress, as we move further and further. But I don't remember a time where I really looked at the pitching landscape and went, wow, there's so many great young pitchers to already pair off with a lot of our older pitchers that are still here. Because, I mean, there's still a lot of wily vets that are doing a great job. I mean, DeGrom, obviously, he's out there. Garrett Cole is a little bit older, but still. I mean, Shane Bieber just having the breakout season he had, he's 25. I mean, forgetting about Bieber. And there's young pitchers still to come. I'm still excited to see Mackenzie Gore for the Padres. And that's just one name. One name. There's a lot of other guys out there that are going to make the pitching game even better. I mean, we could also talk about Garrett Crochet for the White Sox, the 21-year-old, coming right out of Tennessee, throwing gas. I mean, this is just starters. There's a lot of exciting young relievers Josh Hader, exciting young reliever. Devin Williams, just being in the Wisconsin area. I know how excited people are about that. It's just, it was fun to read about this and how promising things look moving forward when it comes to pitching in the MLB. It's a great thing to see, especially with a guy who loves his pitching. I'm excited. I'm excited about the future of baseball. It really, there's a lot of things that could go right here with the players that we have, with the way formats can be changed. I think it's going to be great. So that's going to be it for me here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast, on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Collin Manley. I want to thank you again for listening, downloading. It makes a great deal. It's very supportive to us. Anything else you could do? Hey, could you leave a positive comment? Maybe something that you want us to discuss, something you like from the show. Maybe you have some young pitchers you want to talk about. Maybe you felt there were some people that were left off that rankings. I get it. There was a couple names that I noticed that weren't on there. Maybe there was something you learned from the postseason you want to talk about. Hey, maybe you have some takes on those umpires as well. Whatever it is, leaving a comment, help us out. Great deal. Put together a better show for you. I want to thank you once again for listening. Signing off here, I'm Collin Manley on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.